What am I going to say next? I could start just wondering about why we don't eat owls. Why don't we eat owls? They seem perfectly good. Where did that come from? Well, as far as you're concerned, it came out of nowhere. Right? But the same thing happens in the privacy of your own mind. It's happening right now. You've all made an effort to be here tonight, presumably because you wanted to hear what I had to say about free will. And you're trying to listen to me, but you have a voice in your head that just says things. Haven't you noticed? Now, I'm standing up here trying to reason with you, and you'll think, he looks a little like Ben Stiller. I was hoping I didn't look that much like Ben Stiller. Thoughts just emerge in consciousness. Okay, we are not authoring them. We can't think them, we can't choose them before we think them. That would require that we think them before we think them. If you can't control your next thought, and you don't know what it's going to be until it appears, where is your freedom of will? Now, at this moment, some of you are thinking, what the hell is he talking about? Here's what I'm talking about. You didn't choose that thought either. If you're confused by what I'm saying, you didn't create that state. Conversely, if you understand what I'm saying and you find it interesting, you didn't create that either. Everything is just happening. And that includes your thoughts and intentions and desires and your most deliberate efforts. We will come back to that point. Now, of course, in a sense, our brains, do think our thoughts before we think them. And they think many things that we never hear about. We're conscious of only a tiny fraction of what goes on in our minds. And we continually notice changes in our experience, in thoughts and intentions and moods and resulting behavior. But we are utterly unaware of the neurophysiological changes that produce those changes. I mean, consider the sensation of touching your finger to your nose. Okay, feel free to try this. It seems simultaneous. It seems like the nose touches the finger at the same time the finger touches the nose. Okay, and while it may be simultaneous in the world, we know at the level of the brain the timing has to be different. It simply takes longer for the input from the fingertip to reach sensory cortex than it does from the nose. And this is true no matter how short your arms or long your nose. So the experience of the present moment, even of the simplest sensation, is built upon layers of unconscious processing that we're not aware of. Okay, so even the apparently simple conscious events are not entirely what they seem. The present moment is, in some sense, already a memory that is being buffered. Now, needless to say, this unconscious machinery produces not only our perceptions, but our thoughts, intentions, actions, decisions. And this is where the notion of free will and moral responsibility begin to get squeezed. Now, many people have demonstrated in a lab, in many labs actually, that a person's conscious decision comes after processes that can be detected. And there's a time lag between the moment you think you've decided to do something and the moment at which your brain decided. And this has been proven. Benjamin Libet did this with EEG, and this has been done with fMRI, and actually direct recordings from the cortices of patients about to undergo surgery. We know that even the simplest, most apparently voluntary decision, like the decision to move your left hand versus your right hand, or the decision to push the left button or the right button, when you put people in this paradigm and you have them watch a clock, a special clock that allows them to discriminate just very fine increments of time, and you ask them simply to make the choice to move whenever they want to. They can move their left hand or their right hand. Just notice what time it was on the clock when you finally were aware of which course you were going to take. We know that some moments, half a second, sometimes as much as 5 seconds, before a person is consciously aware of what they're going to do, we can see in the brain what they were committed to doing. So the experience of deciding is, during this period where you still feel that you are free to do anything you want, has already been determined by the state of your brain. So needless to say, this time lag is very difficult to reconcile with free will, because in principle it would allow someone to predict what you're going to do while you still think you're making up your mind. But the truth is that even if there were no time lag, even if the conscious intention were truly simultaneous with the neurophysiological underpinnings, there would still be no room for free will, because you still wouldn't know why it is you do what you do in that moment. And again, you can notice this fact about yourself directly. Well, let's run a little experiment. Think of a film, any film, it doesn't matter, a good one, a bad one, and notice what your conscious process of selection is like. Notice first that this is as free a decision as you're ever going to get. I mean, you have all the films in the world to choose from, and I've simply said, pick one. Does everybody have a film? I'm sorry to say you've all picked the wrong film, so don't ask me how I know that, but I do. Do it again. Pick another film and just be sensitive to what the experience is like. Do you see any evidence for free will there? Let's look for it. First, if it's not here, it's not anywhere, so we better be able to find it here. First, let's rule out all of those films whose names you don't know and which you haven't seen and which you couldn't have possibly thought of if your life depended on it. Okay, there's no freedom in that, obviously. But then there are all these other films which you're perfectly aware of, but which simply didn't come to consciousness. You absolutely know that The Wizard of Oz is a film, but you just didn't think of The Wizard of Oz. Now think about this. Were you free to choose that which did not occur to you to choose? For whatever reason, your Wizard of Oz circuits were not primed in such a way as to deliver it as a possibility. Of course, if you did think of The Wizard of Oz, you should consider yourself a genius. Okay, so you probably thought of several films. And let's say you thought of Lawrence of Arabia and Avatar and Mad Max. Okay, so you kind of converged on those three, and then you thought, well, I'm Australian, I'll go with Mad Max. And then you thought, no, Mel Gibson is more than a little creepy at this point in his life. So I'm going to go with Avatar. Okay? And you settled on Avatar. Well, you still don't know why you chose Avatar over Lawrence of Arabia. And this is the sort of decision that motivates the idea of free will. You go back and forth between two options, and you're not suffering any obvious constraints from the external world or any coercion. It just, you appear to be doing all of it. It's just you and your thoughts. But when you look closely, it is a mystery why you chose one over the other. And you might have a story to tell about it. You might say, well, I saw an animated movie last week, and Avatar's animated, so I remembered that, and so I just went with Avatar. Okay, well, the first thing to say is that we know that those sorts of explanations are almost always wrong. When you bring people into the lab and manipulate their decisions, they always have a story about why they did what they did, and it never bears any relationship to what actually influenced them. So you can bring people into the lab and give them a hot beverage as opposed to a cold one to hold in their hands, and get them to cooperate more or to like one person more than another, and they have no idea that the temperature of the cup in their hands is influencing them at all. The psychology is just bursting with evidence of that kind. But even if you're right in this case, even if the memory of the animated film was the thing that steered you to Avatar over Lawrence of Arabia, you still can't explain why it had that effect. Why didn't it have the opposite effect? Why didn't you think, well, I just saw an animated film, so I'm going to go with something else. I'll go with Lawrence of Arabia. The thing to notice about this is that you, the conscious witness of your inner life, isn't making these decisions. All you can do is witness these decisions. I mean, you no more picked a film in the subjective sense than you would have if I picked it for you. I could have been saying Star Wars, Hannah and Her Sisters. These names were just appearing in consciousness. There was this first moment where I said, pick a film, and nothing had happened, and then all of a sudden, the names of films started coming to you. And you didn't know which they would be until they appeared.